Hello, everybody, and welcome to our September 2024 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to have our highly esteemed faculty member, Stevie Lowe, back with us on the show. So, thank you so much for joining us again today. And how are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Cal. Doing good. Excited about the upcoming equinox and all of the drama of September will bring.
So, there's a lot going on this month. Absolutely. Okay, Stevie, into week one, what stands out for you?
We're getting our outer planet retrograde of Uranus. I like to think of it as Uranus direct, one jolt forward, retrograde, two jolts back. So yeah, I'm interested to see specifically kind of people regretting crazy food trends and all that kind of weird cultural stuff we've seen with Uranus and Taurus and the Earth sign. Another point to Uranus retrograding, I think we saw a lot of drama when we had Mars conjunct Uranus. We're not going to get that again, but during that entire dramatic period, we also had Uranus conjunct fixed star Algol. So this retrograde is going to see Uranus continue that hovering and then ultimately passing Algol once again. And I just think it's going to be a tumult time, and that doesn't bode well or harmonious for this retrograde. It might not be such a boring retrograde.
That's
um
a really good point. Of course, we had the attempted assassination. We had that Algol picture in there. What's interesting here is when Uranus turns retrograde, we're going to have all of the outer planets retrograde. So I have this sense of we've kind of got one foot collectively in the old world and one foot trying to get itself into the new world. And I don't think that's really going to change until we get to maybe the end of January 2025, as collectively we may be able to and hopefully start moving forward. So this is kind of push and pull back with all of these retrogrades happening. Of course, Pluto is dipping its toes for the final time for a very long time back into Capricorn. So again, that feeling of going back, that push and pull, and not until we get into next year, I don't think collectively we're really moving that fast.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Pluto re-entering Capricorn, I think it's definitely going to rehash a lot of stuff. Just a lot of the difficulty over the last 4 years coming back up. I know we're seeing the election that is 2016 2.0 version, so that's coming to mind too. Those are longer trends for us, like you said. I think looking far ahead in the future is a good perspective to hold with that. And then for the little stuff, we have Mercury trine Chiron, which I love for songwriting, poetry writing, having conversations that are to the heart, close to the heart, and sort of having that assertion of the self and the will between Aries and Leo and putting yourself forward. Really, Chiron, the wounded healer, but this transit is really Chiron, the like I'm standing up for myself person. I think we'll have a lot of the mental cohesion to not ride our emotions, but actually think about them and how they inspire our own actions and personal drives.
Absolutely. And what's quite interesting, we've got the new moon in Virgo September 3rd. So for me, this is again setting intentions, but it's also the cleanup committee. But I feel, going to your point before about Uranus, maybe it's such an earthquake that this cleanup committee is going to be having a lot of work on its hand. And really, yes, Mercury is returning direct tomorrow on Thursday, but we're not really, for me, the first week, we're not really gaining speed yet. We're still, I've also got this feeling of like a nervous, jangly energy to the first week of September. Things aren't really moving ahead. Mercury's not really picking up speed. Maybe it is a great time, as you say, Stevie, with the Mercury trine Chiron to maybe sit back a bit, maybe write some poetry or set out some music and some tones. But I've got a feeling like this is a bit of a tricky week for me, week one, I feel.
Yeah, and then we have Mars square Neptune, which is just that getting carried away with the emotion, getting carried away with we have that push and pull of the thinking, self-assertion, the new moon refining, and then we have this like gush of energy. So getting carried away with, wearing too much cologne, just being that really smelly guy. Um, and Venus conjunct the South Node, we're eventually going to see a lot other planets conjunct the South Node this month too. And we'll come back to that because that'll be pretty important as we see the shifting of the nodes in the forthcoming months. But it is just like a drain of, a self-draining aspect, Venus conjunct the South Node.
Excellent point. And I think as we get to September 7th, maybe collectively expect the unexpected. Maybe there's a news or event that surprises people. That'd be quite interesting to see as we get deeper into the week. Okay, into week two, what stands out for you?
Definitely Sun opposite Saturn. We're looking at a pause. Whatever you have planned, pause it. Um, yeah, we're looking at this from the Virgo to Pisces axis, so it's like getting really a few trademarks this month are like getting lost in the sauce, and so this is gonna have to be like a sobering event of what is tangible versus what is again, how are my feelings superseding my material like needs or desires.
I like the key word there, sobering or sobering event. I feel like the second week might be good as Mercury's picking up speed and goes back into its domicile into mutable Earth. Maybe a good week to start hashing out some plans. I mean, we're still not gaining too much energy with the Sun Saturn opposition, but maybe a good time to get your planner out, start writing down the details, start making plans. Yes, the Sun Saturn opposition may feel a bit restrictive, but for me, this is probably a good time to start making notes of what needs to be organized and picked up as we have that back to school feel in
Mhm.
September.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And then we have the Mercury, like as you mentioned, returning Virgo, exiting Shadow, and sextile Mars. So it really is, a good productive kick of energy after the sobering pause. And then we end it with the Sun square Jupiter, which is I'm looking a little worried at these Jupiter squares because we're just seeing a mixing of information that I think Virgo is not going to be super excited about. This really detailed sign squaring this Jupiter, which is in detriment. So it's not necessarily in a habitat to be expansive, but it is expansive. So its square is accentuating that lack of detail that Jupiter has and the need for like real plans that Virgo needs.
That's a wonderful point. Absolutely. So after week two, heading into week three, what stands out for you?
Well, Venus trine Jupiter is one of the better things we get in September. Specifically on this day, we also have I picked this out as an election a couple months back. The moon is going to be applying to trine Venus and Jupiter from Aquarius. I think it happens around 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you all want to look that up. And I don't know what the rising sign for it is. I want to say I had Libra Rising, conjunct Spica. So Venus trine Jupiter, lovely moon trining Venus and Jupiter. If you have anything that you want, like the favor of the gods for, do it that day. It'll probably come across as sweet, exciting, buoyant. Yeah, it's just the two benefics and the moon meeting. So always a good sign. I'm really holding on to that one.
That's a lovely description, a great time for making any elections. And I agree with you. I feel like week two, we're going from week two, which is good for organizing, planning, cleaning up. As we get into week three, as you pointed out, we've got the two benefics in a nice connection with one another. We're in air signs, so Venus will be moving into a domicile, and we've got Jupiter, so this air quality. I think this is a great time to socialize, but we're still in Virgo season. So I've just got this picture of if you go into a nice formal restaurant with friends or museums, Of course, we've got some full moon energy in Pisces. So I have this wonderful feeling for week three of just, museums or art, or if you're artistically inclined, maybe picking up your paintbrush. I think this is a week where you can start having some enjoyment, I believe, in September.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally love that. We have a couple of harsh things going on. Mars square the nodes, so once again, in popular culture, that could be like just some Martian expression that gets heightened or it catches our attention, some kind of tension that we're experiencing. Venus opposite Chiron, so this would be maybe be scrutinizing the poem you wrote earlier in the month or scrutinizing the song you wrote. Just or a sense of refining your own sense of harmony and feeling a little off and non-harmonious, which is fine. We have our Mercury opposite Saturn, another kind of drag. But we kind of get the picture at this point. It's following the sun. So whatever has happened, and now Mercury is it's again, like you kind of mentioned, the cleanup of the sobering truth from the week before. So yeah, that looks a few drags, but they're reflective drags, and they're something to keep your feet on the ground during the buoyant energy that we're experiencing.
I love that part. Keeping the feet on the ground. That's a wonderful description for week three. Wonderful. Okie dokie. Into week four. What stands out for you?
Well, we have the sun entering Libra, so I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be at the shifting of the seasons. We have sun we have Venus square Pluto, similarly. So we have Venus at the tail end of Libra, Sun just entering Libra. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. I don't like that. I don't like that square to Pluto. That's a disconnect as well. So the party is definitely starting to kind of settle down by this point. We have another few harsh aspects this month where it's a lot of just dealing with what what is good for us, and what is back. It's again with the Pluto going back years and confronting with what have I done over these past years, like what you know how have I evolved, and is my sense of self-love adequate? Yeah, that stuff might come into the picture.
Such wonderful points, because even here, even as we're going into the first week of Libra season, whether it's to socialize, we've got the air quality, but there's that double whammy of you just mentioned you feel like this more intense undercurrent. And Venus obviously moves quite fast, so for a couple of days, but the Venus double whammy of the ruler Libra, we're going into its detriment into Scorpio, and the square to Pluto for me is just that double whammy of intensity. So if you're in any relationships, this might be a time where things might simmer to the surface, or things might need to be said, with a lot of Mercury action this month as well. So I feel like there's just that element of intensity. So maybe keeping an eye out with your relationships, what's going on with friendships or partners, and if there's anything that needs to come to the surface and anything that needs to be said during the fourth week.
Absolutely. Yep. And then we have Mercury following in the line to oppose Neptune as well. So more of that elements of confusion are coming up. It's very, disorienting, because we have the opposition to Saturn and then the opposition to Neptune that the planets are going to be aspecting. And so it is really this like sobering truth, and then you get caught up in another mess of, what is happening in Pisces, what is happening with the emotions. Am I getting carried away again? The details we're losing the details, we're getting the details. So it's a rough month. We definitely want to caution to keep our feet on the ground for this month, which I think the trines to Uranus and Pluto kind of do help eventually do as well.
It's such a great point about the roughness, but that's the power of astrology. If we know there's some turbulence coming ahead, at least we can put our seatbelt on and see where the choppy waters are.
Yeah, absolutely. We're the life vest.
I love that. I love that. Okay, into the final part, only for 2 days. Anything that stands out?
Yeah. So the sun is going to conjunct the south node, and we didn't actually talk about this. We should have touched on it, but there is a partial lunar eclipse in Pisces Virgo. So that's a pretty big trademark for September. However, we know that it's a partial eclipse. We have the nodes in one sign as well as the actual lunation in the other signs. But when the sun meets the south node, this is going to be eventually an eclipse point for the final eclipse on the Aries axis, Aries Libra axis in October. So the sun's conjuncting the south node, I think, is eventually it's going to give us a hint towards our closing out of this period of Aries Libra eclipse season. It's the sun transiting there at this point is like a symbolic, what are the final things that I have to do here with you now, before we ultimately pass the torch back to pass the nodes back to the Virgo Pisces axis. Mercury is going to conjunct the south node as well, and then Cazimi with the sun conjunct the south node. So but if there's any like truth bombs that come out during this time period, they might have a longer influence than just a quick transit of the nodes. This is definitely going to tie into wrapping up of the eclipse series in Aries and Libra, so that Kazemi is going to be really important in that story as well. Maybe getting pieces of information that are concluding pieces that you haven't, or getting revelatory new information. But yeah, I think with the South Node, we get the idea of the lessening, the taking. So it might be an exhaustive time of communication, and you might feel that, again, with the relationships coming to mind with Libra, that our relationships might be strained, communication in relationships might be strained. We might be just overthinking, over talking in relationship, and not just being in the relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant points. Well, thank you, Stevie, for going for the first couple of weeks in September. As you said, yeah, there's some nice parts. I think week 3 is the best week for me at the moment, but keeping an eye out, and wonderful takes. Thank you so much. Okay, going into all of our rising signs, starting with our Aries Rising friends. What are your thoughts, Stevie?
Well, we have majorly for Aries risings, we have the eclipse axis going through there right now, the nodes there. So all of the, Venus, then the sun, then Mercury going over the south node, Mars squaring the nodes from the fourth house. So definitely family issues. Everything is getting peaked in the seventh house in this case. So it's definitely one-on-one relationships are going to be a huge focus this month. We have Mercury going through the sixth house. So that's going to be, it could be our daily habits and everything, but it's everything that's going to also oppose Saturn from the sixth is going to bring into question a little bit more seriousness. I don't want to play around too much in these ideas, but we have hospitalization and illness on this axis. So just stuff attending to the needs of our decaying bodies, basically.
That's a really good point on that, because of course we've got the chart ruler moving into the angular house. It's going into its fall, Mars, for Aries rising, your chart ruler. So depending what degree of rising sign you have, if it's early degrees, you might get a bit of a touch from that Mars, so being extra careful, maybe out on the roads, or for any accidents that might happen. Stevie, you've mentioned the health piece as well, so that'd be interesting to see. On the shadow side, there may be some conflict. I think you've touched on maybe at the home or what's going on. But ultimately, I think I've got the back to work vibes for Aries rising. I mean, you've got Mercury will be pushing through into the sixth house, as Stevie's mentioned, the sun transiting through. So maybe back to work vibes. And if you've got any children as well, getting them back into school, if you do any sports with them, all those kind of things. It's kind of like we've had fun in the summer. Now it's time to get things done, I think.
Make sure you get your flea medication to your dogs. We have the Pluto there transiting the 10th full sign house, so that another work kind of zone. The exalted lord of the 10th is going to be in the fourth, so maybe feeling the grind, really feeling that summer end grind back into work that you mentioned, Cal.
That's a really great point. And with Pluto dipping its toes back into Capricorn, whole sign, it's going back into that 10th. So maybe some past issues there. That's a really interesting point. I was also going to mention Uranus. So obviously, this chart is for the beginning of September, but anytime a place, a planet, particularly an outer planet, stations to go direct or retrograde, for me, it gives it the energy extra oomph. So very Uranian. And for Aries rising, this Uranus is in your second house. So there could be, this is very generalized, but maybe unexpected events, something around income or finances. Stevie, any thoughts on that Uranus?
Yeah, that's a great point. We're gonna have eventual Sun and Mercury trine Uranus, so there can be times where maybe again with the work theme, we're working and gaining a little extra bonus, or just being pushed to a kind of limit when we have the Mercury squaring Uranus. So also, the if you have children, the cost of clubs and after school activities and things like that coming up. Mhm.
That's a really great point. And if you look at the distribution of all these planets for you, Aries rising, I mean, we're still got the preponderance below the horizon. We're still down below. We're still in the realms of private life, self-development. Others, if you do have children or working with others, co-workers, we don't have many planets above the horizon. So there's still a lot going on in the private life. So it'd be quite interesting to see what happens for you, Aries rising. But as that North Node keeps going through, you do you. And Aries rising, you're going to do you anyway. So
Absolutely.
wonderful. Thank you, Stevie. Okay, into our Taurus rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yep. So I think a big one for Taurus is going to be the retrograding Uranus, especially if you've got the later rising degrees or any planets that are natally square or conjunct. Um, there might be like a lot more personal of a feeling of like two jolts back in this case, where certain cool, unique progress you made, you might be reconsidering it, or it might there might be some consequences for these unique decisions, or you just might be electrocuted or something. So, don't worry, electrocution. No.
Don't get
Um,
electrocuted, Taurus rising.
yeah. No, there's definitely a zap quality to it with the station retrograde. So it just might feel like, this kind of electric energy you were carrying, it might kind of fizzle for a little while and just be a little bit down. But I like the ninth house trying to Pluto there. So if you're studying anything in astrology, or you're doing any kind of multicultural learning, then this is a great time to be immersed and zapped right into that.
That's a wonderful point. I'm interested with this Mars for you, Taurus rising. So we've got Mars will be coming through into your third house in fall. So if you're working from home, for example, I think there's going to be more communication. If you're writing a lot of emails, it might be quite pointed. You might get a little bit irked at times if you're dealing with difficult co-workers. But saying that, you do have chart ruler Venus, which will be gaining dignity, goes into a domicile through the sixth. So that might help out a little bit as well. Any thoughts there, Stevie?
Yeah, absolutely. That Venus's passage through the sixth looks like a beautiful time. We're gonna have that trine to Jupiter from the sixth, so it's probably a great time to either invest in any kind of beauty product or Venusian activity you're interested in, or also another good transit for that kind of bonus, or you might be able to earn a little extra income during this time. Um, Maybe even with Sun in the fifth, it could be if you're experimenting with art, selling art. We have Mars going in the third, so hoofing it around neighborhood, going to shops. Yeah, just a lot of side giggy, fun little mini adventure energy coming in with that one.
I love that. And you mentioned the sun going through the fifth. Now, of course, depending on what your ascendant degree is, this might be a great time for a little creative project. That sun is going to be making a nice connection to your ascendant at some point, depending on what degree that is. But I love that point, Stevie. Absolutely. And you actually picked up on that Jupiter. That's going to be spending a long time in the second house. So hopefully some good fortune from you there. Wonderful.
Yeah, you're gonna have Jupiter there, so you always want to definitely don't take for granted when it's getting a good transit. So it's getting the good transit from Venus. It's gonna happen there, so don't take that for granted out of this long cycle. You want to cherry pick the really good moments and parlay those forward. Mhm.
Wonderful point. And for you, Taurus rising, the preponderance of planets are below the horizon. I know you've got a couple of outer planets above the horizon. So again, this is more for you, private life, concentrations for where these transiting planets are going. And it's more towards the second quadrant. So maybe a lot of dealings with family, children, if you've got any children or co-workers. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting for Taurus rising in September.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Okay. For our Gemini rising friends, Stevie, your thoughts?
Mhm. Gemini is probably going to be excited to see Mars leaving the first, but it's just going to go into the second, which is probably not going to feel too great either. But yeah, it could be a lot, having to do a lot, and now it's like, okay, I don't have to do as much anymore. The energy is gone, or maybe you have extra energy and restlessness rocking you about, and so it'll be nice to kind of see that dissipate for you. Um, a lot of stuff for the home and family and work for Gemini risings as well. Jupiter ruling the 10th from the first. And it's not necessarily super close to the lunations, but it is, it's in a by sign aspect to them. So I think those it's always going to be pulled in during this season with Gemini, with Jupiter and Gemini, to have the lunations going through the fourth, 10th. I think it's with the partial eclipse. So major things starting to go off with work or at home, or how that definitely translates to you and your with Jupiter in the first. And yeah.
Such a wonderful such wonderful points on there. And I feel like for Gemini rising, I feel like maybe the last couple of months have been maybe a bit cumbersome, a bit irksome. But what I do love hearing, to use Stevie's phrase, a breath of fresh air, we've got the two benefics making a connection from your first to the fifth house. So this might be a great month for creative endeavors. That Venus will be, depending where your ascendant degree is, making a nice trine to your ascendant. So if you would like to take maybe a spa day or do something creative as it goes through the fifth, maybe just giving your chart this month a bit of fresh air that you need. You mean your Gemini rising, your mutable air. Anyway, I think that Venus gives an extra air, an extra creativity in that part. So I do like that for you. What are your thoughts, Stevie, with that?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's probably going to be stressful with the T square energy, the mutable T square energy. So taking the taking the win of Venus in the fifth and actually putting time into activating the fifth house is going to be something it's going to be calming, refreshing. The sun is going to move there, so it's going to take off some of the heat from the fourth, 10th as well. But it's still, you're going to be called into the work home life drama. So follow Cal's advice and take a spa day, go to a museum, do something reinvigorating that has nothing to do with logistics. Yeah.
Wonderful point. And of course, your chart ruler, Gemini rising, Mercury, it's going to start gaining speed as it goes direct and then eventually go into its domicile, going through your fourth house. So maybe you start gaining a bit more oomph as the month goes on. It's quite interesting. What else have we got? We've got that Uranus in the 12th, vibrating at the beginning of the month. Any thoughts there, Stevie?
Well, that station in the 12th is going to be probably pretty chill for Gemini risings. Unless you have a very active 12th house already. You want to see what's going on with your Venus in that case. But um from the 8th to the 12th, yeah, there is a trine is good, but between malefics, it's very morally, it's very ambiguous if that's a good thing. So yeah, any kind of explosive secrets that you might need to bury, or any kind of the station retrograde might be dealing with the fallout of a secret, or dealing with the fallout of a 12th house topic, some kind of seclusion. But it looks like that seclusion is sort of getting shaken up, and it's not going to be that quiet in this case.
That's such a great point, and you make the important point here. We are still dealing with an outer planet, so if you do take a look at your own natal chart, say if you've got any fixed planets, any signs at around the late degrees of any fixed signs, maybe pay attention there. And all the advice I think you've given Stevie is absolutely spot on. But again, Gemini rising, you've got a preponderance of the planets below the horizon and the faster moving planets. Here, I mean, we're still in the first, second quadrant, so development of self, dealing with others, and a lot of still private life going on. I feel for Gemini rising. Wonderful. Okay, into our Cancer rising friends. Your thoughts, Stevie?
Cancer rising, we're about to see Mars go into your first. So you're gonna pick up where Gemini left off, and um insert, frenetic energy, insert restless leg syndrome. Um, there's Mars going in Cancer. It could be emotionally feeling some kind of protective nature, some kind of security and protection. It's when it squares the nodes, it'll be square your nodes in your fourth, 10th axis. So if there was anything precursing going on at home or in work, this would trigger that, which you might have already felt that with the eclipses from the last 2 years. So yeah, Mars is if Mars transiting your first, I definitely would just recommend finding an outlet for the frenetic energy that comes with that. And with it being in Cancer, it might be some kind of healing power with water in yourself, swimming, swim laps, put your face in some ice water if you're feeling panicked. Yeah.
That's such wonderful advice. I love that water component you're bringing in because, of course, as Mars comes through, Mars rules your fifth house. So if you can, as Stevie's saying, maybe take a few laps, make that energy and push it out. Of course, Mars goes into its fall. So especially if Cancer rising, you've got early degrees of Cancer rising on the shadow side, maybe double checking your itinerary, watching out for people on the roads or any minor accidents that might happen. Keep an eye out there. But I think, Stevie, that's a wonderful outlet, maybe to turn that into fifth house and turn it into a getting out, swimming, sports. I don't know. How long does the pool stay open for? I don't know.
That's true. And also we got trine to Saturn in the ninth coming up, not specifically this month, but yeah, there's a ninth house. Use your ninth house energy stuff, tap into astrology, or any kind of fun esoterics that you might be able to get into to get yourself in trouble with.
It's a wonderful point. And I feel like Cancer Rising, again, if you work from home, depending on what your position is, there's a lot of third house activity going on. So as Mercury picks up speed, we're going to be transiting, gaining its strength and domicile, going through the third house. So if you work from home, maybe more emails start popping through, more communications with others. It might just be simply more trips around the local environment, wherever your local places, or communicating with siblings. But there's a lot going on in that third. We'll have the sun transiting through, of course, Mercury coming through. We've got Venus going into domicile, going through the fourth. So that might be a nice time to maybe beautify the home in some way if you've got any projects going on there. Uranus, any thoughts on Uranus bobbing around for early September, Stevie?
Yeah, the station retrograde is interesting for the 11th house. So I'm wondering if you Cancers have gotten yourself into a community that you might want to get out of, or if there was maybe some kind of community support for a project that got that went stationary. So yeah, if there's any kind of mishaps going on in alliance circles of your alliance or friendship circles, it's just Uranus is going to go direct again, but now it's time to, go back and see if are these alliances really strong? Can they outlast Uranus?
It's so funny, Steve. I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking if there's any groups that aren't working, or even if you're just online in friendship groups that you need to jump out of. Of course, we're in political season now, so there's obviously a lot of fraying and a lot of, well, even over the last few years since 2016, a lot of fraying family and relationships going on. So that I was thinking the exact same thing. That's quite interesting. Or maybe a new group. Maybe you find an interesting new astrology group that you
Or
join.
maybe
You
you lost touch with the group and you go back to the retrograde brings you back into something. Yeah, yeah,
I love that. Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Fantastic. Okay. So let's go to our Leo rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts.
Leo rising. So we have Mercury that is going to be leaving the first. The sun is the I think the Kazemi at the end of the month will be a special time for Leo risings. Um, for now, for the beginning, there's a lot of going into finances, a lot going into resources, finances, maybe you're considering trying a new diet, so you're buying different kinds of food for, in the Virgoian way. Maybe you're looking for a new texture of clothing that feels comfortable. So just thinking beyond money in the second house. What else do we have with Virgo? We have definite diet season. Diet season's over, but we're now going into the fall season. So it's like we're going into, well, I guess the best example of harvesting a lot of our plants. So if you're a gardener, this is definitely your harvest moment. Um, and otherwise, you're going to be kind of getting yourself ready for this season change meticulously. But with the sun averse the first house, when we have the sun ingress into the third, um, you're gonna flaunt your new style.
I love that. Wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. I feel like Leo for Leo rising, we're at that point now where the party's kind of over. We're out of Leo season, we're into Virgo season. It's quite interesting as we got that Mars, which will be transiting through the 12th, maybe watching out as we get these back to work vibes. If there's anybody behind the scenes, maybe trying to undermine you, or just watching out for that kind of backstabbing vibe I'm getting as Mars goes through the 12th. Really good point you're making, Stevie. We've got this financial component that may be highlighted. One of my great Leo rising friends, a bit of an overspender, fantastic, enjoys life, which I love. A bit of an overspender, so maybe that issue is highlighted as Mercury and the Sun both transit through the second house. Maybe just highlighting that area of life and seeing what you're doing in that area. We've got Venus gaining strength as she goes through the third house, so it might be quite pleasant communications with others, whether you're dealing with siblings or you've back to work vibes and you're dealing with co-workers. Might be quite interesting. Any thoughts, Stevie, on the Uranus component here for Leo rising?
Well, I want to piggyback on something you said about Mars transiting the 12th and the idea of the backstabbing thing. That is a great point, and I think it's also supported by the sun, and eventual Mercury's opposition to Saturn, which rules the seventh house. So there is this level of, is there open conflict? Is there private conflict? Yeah, there's these levels of direct impact that happen because of conflict this month. So it's more of a bit of a warning than the other signs are getting. So just I think that was a really great point, and I wanted to extrapolate on that one. Um, and then we have Uranus in the 10th, so same kind of a deal. Are we going back to an old job, or are we trying to leave a job now? The definite feelings of, am I in the right industry, or do I have, sometimes the 10th can be a boss itself. So are my bosses this Uranian figure, and will they be here forever? Um, yeah, conflict with that, and definite taking stock. Whenever a planet goes retrograde, there's a great deal of taking stock that we kind of are forced to do. So
Wonderful point. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, into our Virgo rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Virgo rising. So Virgo, we've talked a bit about this eclipse, but it's a partial eclipse with the nodes out of sign, but still feel the need to really hit home that it's going to be a pretty big lunation for Virgo and Pisces axis. So I think that Virgo risings and Pisces risings specifically are going to feel the initial impacts of what the next 2.5 years of eclipse season are going to bring. So that's always a story that's going to happen when it actually unfolds. But I think there might be a taste of, um, of this vibe shift in the nodes that your Virgos are getting early on. So they might be able to help us out later, after what happened this new moon for you. Um, it's going to be a lunar eclipse. So the idea of relationships are coming into play, but first we have the new moon in Virgo. So first it's the selfness, and then it might be a little bit jarring later on when we get the eclipse vibes and everything opposing Saturn. So, is there a redefining that's happening with Saturn in the seventh? When a planet transits the first house, we can always say, oh, yeah, this is like something we're experiencing, we're redefining, but this also happens when planets are transiting the seventh because we're very much defined in relationship. So yeah, this is a longer story since Saturn's been in Pisces, but it's definitely it's like a tripwire for all of the Saturn seventh house lessons that they've been undergoing.
Absolutely wonderful points of Virgo rising. I'm getting a sense here that all the hard work you've been doing, maybe over the last couple of months, I've got a feeling this month is some of that hard work paying off. We've got the two benefics, we've got the Jupiter through the 10th, and then Venus will be gaining that dignity and going through the second. So I almost got a feeling, I know this is quite generalized, but a feeling of some of that work may be paying off, maybe an extra boost in income or good news from your bosses or from work, that maybe all your diligence and hard work you've put in over the last few months, maybe some benefits coming from that. And as we have the sun transiting through the first house, obviously your chart ruler will gain its dignity and come in through your first house as well, advocating for yourself and saying, what you want. If you've been working hard, maybe asking for that raise. And if you do, it might be a good time to do that with the two benefics, and advocating for yourself and just saying, this is what I want, and treating yourself as well is the kind of the vibes I'm getting Virgo rising after all the hard work and diligence. Treat yourself and advocate for yourself.
I love that. I think you make great points. They absolutely will have the wherewithal to effectively communicate their position and the good graces of those benefics.
Wonderful point. Maybe sourcing tension might be the south node going through the second, but with everything else in consideration, that might be interesting. Stevie, any thoughts on that Uranus up there above the horizon?
Yeah, it's going to be a lovely trine from the sun to Pluto and Uranus. Eventually Mercury will do the same. So definitely a good time to go back over your astrology books. Go back over any old classes that you have or lectures. Could be a time when we have incorporate some kind of fifth house activity with the ninth house. So maybe you didn't get a vacation before, maybe you can, squirrel away a little weekend away or something, but taking the control and power and doing something crazy and fun. Yeah, bring the fifth
Wonderful. I love that. Do something a bit crazy and fun. I love that piece of advice. Fantastic. Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Libra Rising. So it's almost your season. You're gonna be You're gonna be waiting, counting the days till it's your season. Libra risings are gonna have Venus blessing their sign. So if you're doing any kind of makeover for yourself, if you want to try a new hairstyle, try a new look, this is a great time to do it. Any kind of personal beauty ritual or anything like that. Even like skincare or something like that. We have exalted Saturn. Saturn's the exalted lord to Libra, so we have, long lasting skincare routine development. Um, we have Venus trining the ninth house Jupiter, so also you guys should squirrel away a little retreat as well, if possible, because that's a lovely trademark for a little vacay. Also, Cal mentioned earlier museums and things like that. So go to high places of art and enjoy it. It'll be educational and beautiful. Yeah. So, but there's an anxiety there when the sun is in the 12th and the lunations are going through the 6/12. So there could be upcoming anxieties that are sixth house, 12th house related that you might not be able to feel powerful over. But once the sun goes into your first house, I think you're gonna feel a grasp of like, okay, I can handle what that is.
Such beautiful descriptions. You read my mind going through I'm Libra Rising, so all of our Libra Rising. A key phrase for us this month is to treat ourselves and recuperate. And Stevie, you've just pretty much lined that out. Of course, we've got our chart ruler gaining that strength going through our first house. So if we want to treat ourselves, whether it's a spa day, we've got that air connection with Jupiter in the ninth. So as Stevie's saying, maybe we go for, a nice walk around a museum, or we do something artistically. But with, as Stevie's saying, with that component of the sun transiting through the 12th and Mercury as it gains speed will go through the 12th as well. I always book a mini vacation in this time of year because it's behind the scenes, need to recuperate later a little bit, been a lot going on. Health has been a component, obviously. We've had Saturn going whole sign through the sixth. And I keep saying every month that I'll try and do better with my diet. I have been trying, and I'm getting better, trying to cut out some of the sweets and the treats and whatnot. But whether that Venus will help or not, I'll have to see. But you make some really good points. Maybe to again just to recuperate, to take some time for ourselves, and to make that point. Stevie, talking about Uranus, any thoughts for us Libra risings in terms of Uranus?
Yeah, that's, things, joint endeavors that you're in partnerships, there's going to be um, some kind of material issues going on with that. Some kind of, what are we sharing? What are we not sharing? What do I have access to share? What does my partner have access to share? Um, did I, flub my taxes this year? Any kind of those joint resource things, it's very likely, or you get an audit, a tax audit when you have the retrograde planet going through, so you might have to go back over and send more documents or things like that. Mhm.
That's a really great point. And one thing I didn't mention as well, we've got Mars going into its fall, be transiting through our 10th house. So maybe mindful. Got any bosses at work that you're having issues with? Maybe some conflicts might come around on the shadow side. Or on the flip side, it just might be extra energy in that field. But the problem is, if there's more energy there and we're really wanting to get out and recuperate and take a bit of a retreat, maybe it comes to a point where you're asking for a bit of time off and you can't get it or something along those lines. So certainly advocate for yourself and take that time to go on a retreat and to treat yourself. I would say for us, of course, we've had the South Node going through for a while. So depending where your ascendant degree is, it might have been a bit of a draining time. And if we take that health component with the Saturn Neptune in our sixth for a long period of time, maybe we do need that time to recuperate, relax, and rejuvenate, I think, for us. And I certainly plan on doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think,
Wonderful.
always mention, we have a preponderance of planets above the horizon here now. So there is, like you said, you have to carve out those times for recuperation because the outer world is going to be needing you and pulling at your strings.
Wonderful. That's such a great point on the distribution. Absolutely. Now we're talking about our Scorpio rising friends. So, Stevie, your thoughts?
Well, we're looking forward to Venus going into the first. Venus isn't particularly happy in Scorpio, but Venus, a benefic is a benefic, however, which way you slice it. So I think for Scorpios, Mars is going to be pretty big. Mars going into Cancer. Mars is the ruling planet to Scorpio, so like Aries, it has a little more associations, or we want to look to it to see what it's doing in terms of how we are. So moving from active mental Gemini into protective with sort of withdrawn Cancer is kind of a big change, but as a water sign, there's going to be a trine aspect by whole sign from Mars to the ascendant. So there's going to be a feeling of level of agency that you have this month that maybe you felt like, with Mars in the eighth, other people are a little bit infringing on your own activity levels, but now Mars in view and whole sign aspect to the ascendant, giving you a little bit more. Also, there is the triplicity by association to Mars has to Cancer, so you won't be without resources.
Wonderful point. And for you, Scorpio rising, a preponderance of planets above the horizon, which has been for a while. So a lot of activity in the public arena of life. I've got a feeling for you, Scorpio rising, as we get deeper into September, and maybe if you've been putting a lot of hard work into your career, what you might have been doing, or group projects or group activities, maybe the last part of September may be a good time to go on a short retreat, maybe do a bit of meditation or relax a bit. We've got Venus transiting through the 12th. We'll have Sun joining and Mercury joining later on. So this may be a good time if it's been a bit hectic over the last couple of months to take a bit of a step back, maybe go and relax somewhere, maybe a bit of meditation for you. But I love what you're saying, Stevie. And of course, as that Mars goes into its fall, it is your chart ruler, goes into the ninth, maybe some conflict and some of the themes that manifest there. But of course, as Stevie's mentioned, you'll have that water trine to your ascendant. So that might be a beneficial part there as well. Stevie, any thoughts on the Uranus for Scorpio rising?
Yeah, so Scorpios, you've been having Uranus in the seventh for a while, and this is definitely a house of partnership. So we're looking at issues in partnership. We're looking at unexpected issues that your partner of any kind is going to bring to the table. Or if you've left a relationship or had a pause or break from it, you might be reconsidering going back. If there was some kind of a heated blowout for you during this Mars Uranus Algol moment, um, I would let that lesson sink in for longer because again, we have Uranus dancing over Algol. So if your partner is showing some kind of aggression or hostility or any, business partner, friendship, one-on-one or relationship, this is probably not going to resolve itself immediately. That level-headedness from the seventh house, you should not be expecting that to happen right now. And you know, in a less dramatic way, it could be a partner has to leave for some trip, some immediate kind of chaos ensued, some kind of breakdown of the person's um, property or things like that.
Wonderful advice, wonderful points. Quite interesting with Scorpio rising. I don't know if I mentioned this last month, but with the greater benefic going through the eighth, I've had a few Scorpio rising friends come into inheritances recently, which is quite interesting. Of course, you've got to look to your own chart. Now, of course, that Jupiter is not highly dignified in its position, but still, as Stevie mentioned before, a benefic is a benefic. So that might be interesting. Of course, it's not going to be everyone with inheritances, but it might be a good time if you're leading to borrow, to borrow money for some reason or another. Depending, of course, you have to look deeper into your own chart to see those extra connections. But that is quite interesting. I've had a few friends talk about coming into inheritances, so
Yeah,
that'll be
that's a
interesting.
great point. Or some kind of secret financer. Yeah. If you're a secret, if you're a secret financer, if you come into a secret financer, that could be what the Venus trine Jupiter might end up being, some kind of behind the scenes deal, getting worked out.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, behind the scenes deal that could very well manifest. Wonderful. Okay, into our Sagittarius rising. Friends, Stevie, your thoughts?
Sages. So we have a lot of stuff going on in the 10th. We have the oppositions to Saturn coming up. We have the trines to Uranus and Pluto and the opposition to Neptune. So that's just a lot going on. You might walk out of September and forget who you are and not know who you are anymore. The ruler of your ascendant is in the seventh, so this is, of course, you have the T square, the mutable T square going on here. So it's just going to be probably a heavy, other people expecting things, having to do a lot of things, and maybe a feeling of like, I don't know where I stand after this, because of all of this. It's like a roller coaster for you. We have an opposition, trine, opposition. So, a lot of activity at home, at work, and in relationships. A lot of communication going on this month.
That's such a great point. And with the distribution of these planets, we're more or less on the right-hand side of the chart. So whether that's immediate environment or a lot going on in the public life, I find that Mars interesting. Now, Mars is going to go into its fall as it transits your eighth house. Now, this is not going to be for everyone, but maybe watch out for possible conflict with partners in relation to shared resources. If you're living with a partner, that might come up to a point, or Stevie's mentioned before about anything that has to be revised in terms of taxes, that might bring up a bit of conflict there. So to keep an eye out on that Mars. That Jupiter's going to be there for a long time, so that'll be quite interesting, as you're saying, Stevie, with the relationship parts. And any thoughts on that Uranus for Sagittarius rising?
Yeah, I wonder what kind of health stuff that you've been going through, or personal health, whether it's not illness but health. If you're revising a program, some kind of physical activity program, body movement, or with earth, food stuff, you might be one of the signs who um retract from one of these weird food crazes that we've been getting with Uranus and Taurus. Um, yeah, so if you have pets, also could be issues with pets, revising programs with pets, treatment programs or training them. So illness, health, wellness, chores. Maybe you're doing unique work that you haven't done, and maybe you're reconsidering, like, maybe I don't want to do this kind of work anymore. So we also have like the element of work as well going on here. Um,
That's a
yeah,
really great point because we've got a lot of the faster moving planets, the Sun, Mercury, as it gains speed going through the 10th, so that work component as well. I feel like this is quite a time on the nice side of, we've got the two benefics from the 7th and the 11th. So maybe this will be a pleasant time to go out with groups of friends or go off to, if there's any late summer gigs or parties or whatnot, this could be a pleasant time in terms of getting out there. We've got a lot of planets above the horizon. So this could be a nice social time for our Sagittarius rising friends.
absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. Into our Capricorn rising friends. And this is you, Stevie.
Yeah. So we're gonna be really sad to see Mars going into Cancer. The exalted Lord of our first house will be as far away as it possibly can from our first house. So we'll be having to take a cold, hard look in the mirror and yearn for the days we felt like we had more energy or more time to put towards things, or things might have been effortless. So conflict in relationship might pop up from this. That's a big one. And we have the Mars gonna hit the bending. So if there's been issues at home or work or what these rules are to us, then those might come up as well. Yeah.
Wonderful points. And I feel like all my Capricorn rising friends are incredibly hard workers. And it's been a tough time with the chart ruler retrograde and spending all that time through the third. I feel like the nice bit of fresh air, maybe that Venus gaining strength going through your 10th house. So if you're due for any short recognition in your career or anything, all the hard work you've been putting in the last few months or last few years, even that you might get some recognition as we get deeper into the month, and well deserved because you all work so hard. I know that's a generalization, but it tends to be true for my Capricorn rising friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have with the Venus energy there in the 10th, trining Jupiter, on I think it was September 15th, we get the moon in Aquarius making a grand trine. So it's hitting off the second house. One thing that we can be grateful for is that Pluto's out of the second house. So now that the moon is going to hit that trine to Jupiter and Venus, if you also have if you want to raise or something like that, or you have something to put yourself out there in terms of getting noticed for something that might increase your finances, that's a great time to do it using that election. So you want to use the election. Pluto's going to go back into the second house and put another strain on your finances for the next 20 years. So just put the stuff in motion to get more finances now before that happens.
I love those points. And speaking about this month, I always call it the back to school vibes. Now you've got the sun transiting through the ninth. You've got Mercury that will gain speed, gain dignity, and go through the ninth as well, making those connections depending where your ascendant degree is. So if you're in higher education at all or going back to college, this is a great time to get back into the swing of things. If you're an astrologer, even like we've got Stevie teaching back at classes now for fall semester, back into the groove that way. I think that's going to be a pleasant time in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's going to be that bittersweet feeling that we've kind of talked about. Oh, the summer fun is over. And now we have to now we have to sort through the details of the day. Yeah, so that we have the sun that's going to hit Saturn, it's going to trine Uranus in the fifth and trine Pluto eventually as well. So we want to say there is where you can take the power, you can. So in this ninth house activities, we can really have the power to harness it right now, do it. There's going to be the blocks like there is for everyone. I would also just note with Saturn there and everything peaking Saturn and squaring to Jupiter, also traffic. Be wary of this screams traffic court all over all over itself to me. So just be careful. I did get a ticket last year because all of us at my kids' high school do an illegal U-turn to pull out of the parking lot, and they were pulling us over three at a time. So this year, it's like now I'm learning my lesson. I'm seeing the mutable square. I'm not gonna make that mistake. So yeah, for Capricorn Rising, be careful with the driving right now, because that should be a little tense. The Uranus in the fifth. Again, consider all goal. Enjoy yourself, but don't enjoy yourself too much. This might be like, the end where I think it was 2018 when Uranus went into Taurus, so we're gearing towards the end, and this is our final retrograde before we eventually leave Taurus. So this is really like in the past, in the past 6 years, what are you going to take with you from this on a level of pleasure, fulfillment, enjoyment?
Wonderful, wonderful advice. And don't follow Stevie's footsteps and get any tickets.
Yeah, don't do it.
Okay, on to our Aquarius rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Aquarius risings are going to be actually dealing with a lot this month. It doesn't look like it quite from the way that the chart is laid out, but if we look at the aspects that Saturn is receiving this month, We use Saturn aspects to outer planets, but if you're on the traditional track, generally we stop at Saturn, which means that Saturn doesn't aspect other planets in traditional astrology, and it's receiving all of the aspects. So this month, Saturn is getting a lot of attention. Um, and it does kind of pick up from last month when we had the Mars and Jupiter square Saturn. But it's going into this month with the oppositions to Saturn. So your ruling planet is going to be, again, one of those signs where people might be expecting a lot from you at this time, and it might be just trying to do as much as you can, but always having something coming up. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on you this month.
Those are some really great points. And I can't help but look at Aquarius Rising, at least some of that. And to take Stevie's point, calling it breath of fresh air, depending on what your ascendant degree is, we've got the greater benefic in the fifth, best part of the year. Well, not so much now, but we've got the Venus transiting through the ninth house. So bringing in the components, bringing in the first, the fifth, and the ninth house. So if you've got any creative projects on the go or anything that may be related to higher education, if you're in astrology yourself, this might be a nice time with that breath of fresh air. I think that's a nice component. Any thoughts, Stevie, for Aquarius Rising on the Uranus?
Yeah, same deal. We want to always remember our goal. So whatever those unique and new changes going on in your home life are, or if there was a thought to go back to something, Uranus is shaking things up in your fourth house of heritage, the land that you're on. So you could be forging a new relationship with a new piece of land that you are unfamiliar with. You might go back to a homeland, or do some kind of, at the end of this transit, find some kind of lost piece of family history or legacy. So if you're into genealogy and family history, I think this is a fun time to look back, and again, reconnect with the land that you're on and get rid of the quirky lamps that you bought if you don't like them.
I love that. I love that. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about our Pisces rising friends. Stevie, what are your thoughts?
So Pisces like Virgo is going to be the center of the month with the lunation. So um Pisces, I think it's been going on for a while. It's not going to end. It's just going to be highlighted this month. A lot of the Saturnian things that you have going on. Um, if you haven't become the old man in the sea by this point, I don't know what you're doing with yourself. Get yourself together.
Old man in the sea. I love that.
If you're not him, what are you doing with your life really? So this is just gonna show you some more stuff to be grudgy about, some more stuff to it's hard work, but it's meaningful, deep work for you. You're gonna be communing with the orcas who are taking down the yachts, and you're gonna be riding the wave of the orcas. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that may have felt heavier actually is going to feel lighter with this opposition. Oppositions are tense, but this opposition sees the seventh house coming into play. So somebody else is going to be taking some of the weight off of you for a second. And in that aspect, again, with Saturn traditionally not making aspects, it's going to be probably a little bit of relief. You might feel like you can share your grief in like a therapeutic way this month.
I love where you're going with that. I want to bring in that Mars piece that will move into your fifth because it might have been irritating as that Mars, depending on what your ascendant degree is, has been rubbing up against ascendant. So maybe that sense of irritation or any minor accidents that might have happened. But as we go into the fifth, yes, Mars goes into its fall, but it'll be making connections with the ascendant. So if there's any outlet, if there's any sports you enjoy doing, whether that's Stevie you brought up before with the water component, whether that's going for a swim or any other sports that has an outlet for that Mars is going to be quite nice. So I think for me overall, Pisces Rising, a less irritating time as we get deeper into September. We've got the Venus going through the eighth, so could manifest in a number of ways. It could be a partner that gets maybe a bit of a bump in income or any of those components. Of course, we've got a lot of seventh house going on. We've got the sun transiting through the seventh. Mercury's going to gain its dignity, go through the seventh as well. And any thoughts there, Stevie?
Yeah, Mercury going into the seventh again. It's going to be somebody coming in with the answers. There's somebody providing like, oh, good, you did have this. And Jupiter transiting the fourth, ruling the 10th. So I gotta say, if you've been bringing your work home with you, that might become an issue, and that might be something that you can sort of release when you get the Venus trine to Jupiter and be like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be bringing my work home with me. I'm gonna be sharing this joy with partnership. So go on dates with your partner. I think Cal, you mentioned a potential boost, maybe in a partner's assets. That might be something to look forward to as well.
Wonderful point. So when does Jupiter go retrograde? Is that, I've got some notes here. Is that October, I believe? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe something to talk about for next month. Obviously, your chart ruler. Well, again, for the best part of a year, going through the fourth, which is again still angular, very powerful there. Great points. Did we touch on Uranus? I'm losing track
Oh,
now.
we didn't touch on Uranus here, so we're gonna have the Sun also in the seventh, trine Uranus in the fourth, or third, and Pluto in the 11th. So this isn't just benefits from partnership, but potentially from people in the community or associations. So if you're in any kind of clubs, a knitting club perhaps, you might join with this transit. Mars going into the fifth. So yeah, go around the city, go around the town. Third house is also traffic and things like that, so be aware of traffic for Pisces as well. Um, but I think the retrograde Uranus in the third might also be having to do with communication, and it might be maybe you've started speaking a different language of some sort or tried a different communication style, and this is a point for you to refine it. And this would be a Uranus, maybe you're learning coding or something like that. So all kinds of sort of educational prospects with this retrograde Uranus there.
Oh, I like that. Well, you mentioned as Mars goes into the fifth, it's ruling the ninth as well. So might be a creative outlet. Wonderful. Fantastic. Okay. Well, Stevie, thank you so much for joining our September forecast. What's going on with you? What's coming up in the next few months? What projects do you have in the works?
Thanks, Cal. Well, I have my astrology zine coming out in September, so check my website out for that. And I have working on a class for Kepler, Greek mythology. So I hope you join me and Inga Thornell for that.
Stevie is such a brilliant teacher, so certainly sign up for a fascinating class. And for everybody watching, I'll leave the links in the description and comment boxes below so you can see what Stevie is up to. I feel like I'm forgetting something else. What else am I forgetting? Am I?
Oh, no, I don't think so. We're gonna be working on a project tomorrow. That might be what you're thinking of.
I think that's what it is. We've got something else in the works that you'll see soon.
Cool. Thanks, Cal.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Stevie. And you'll be back for, let me see, October, November, December, right? For the final month of the year.
Yes, very excited about that too. So I'll see you then, Cal.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you, Stevie, and everyone for watching. Bye bye. Cheers.
Bye.